Good afternoon, Danvers. Today is September 5th, 2025, and it's Friday afternoon. Show must go on, and I'm here with my friendly entourage of turkeys and a bush instead of a guest. So, welcome to all. My turkeys today are representative of the planning board. Now, Lou is right in the middle, and Mr. Sears is on the side, and there are all five of them are represented here on this table, because that's what we're going to be talking about first. So the story of the day is let me go back one step. The story of the day is going to be the Danvers Concerned Citizens meeting regarding town issues related to planning and the lack of the master plan. That's the primary story. However, right now I'm Mark Zubarek, and I'm here to be the host for Topics of the Town News. And the agenda and opinions are solely by the topics of the town host, our guests, contributors, and commentators, and the turkeys. They will have their own comments. Don't kid yourself. Danvers Concerned Residents. The subtitle for this show is Danvers Concerned Residents Unite, ready to retain the Danvers small town feel and culture. That's what we're going to be talking about. But before we go into the subject, I have one quote that I have used in the past, but I think is very appropriate at this time. And the quote is, "Unthinking respect for authority is the greatest enemy of truth." What I think it means to me is you can't trust anybody except yourself in regards to what the truth that you're speaking of. I bring this forward because we need and deserve strong leadership in our community. Where have all the leaders gone? That's a question that's been raised many times. Where are the local heroes in our society? Where are the town fathers and mothers who are elected by us, the voters? Have we misplaced our trust in our community leaders? I don't think so, but some people think so because they cannot be heard by anyone in our government. The current town government is deaf to the issues that count. We are overtaxed, abused as taxpayers and ratepayers of our utilities and basic services. We need relief. In November or December, there will be a rate hearing, and that's where we need to come out and complain to our elected officials where they'll set the rate for the next fiscal year. They will claim that, hey, we've already spent the money. Well, it's time to pull back a little bit. Our voices are heard at public assemblies, but when it comes to taking action, we are abandoned due to political and deliberate anticipation that the complainers will get tired and go away. That's exactly what they expect. Our leaders are asleep at the switch. And I will explain this a little later on, but which and how many public comments are presented but not acted upon by our select board and other committees. Talk is cheap and answers are lacking. We must understand the political tactics and the kind of words of wisdom that Mark Twain said. And Ben, if you can put up Mark Twain for me, no amount of evidence will ever persuade the idiots. So Mark Twain had this issue all locked up years ago. And the thing is that we need to ask our leaders, our elected officials, and our department heads in town hall, where are we going? Have you heard our complaints, and where are we going to be going forward? There has been a plethora of evidence regarding the issues that Danvers residents care about, and nothing is accomplished by our leaders. First, before we get into our Danvers Concerned Citizen story, I'd like to express DCAT's and my own and my family's condolences to the Tybert family regarding the recent death of Mrs. Walter Tybert. She was a longtime leader in our community and town meeting member. She mentored many of us becoming town leaders in Danvers. Well, her son, Wally Tybert, has also been involved in our community, and he continues as currently on the Finance Committee and some other committees. But Wally, we are sorry about your mother's passing, and she will be well remembered on our lips when we speak of the town government, especially the town meeting. Now we come to our primary story, and what I like to do is reintroduce our turkeys because they are representative of our planning board. Our planning board is very adept to making decisions. And one of the things that has been evident, and that has been discussed last night in this particular meeting, is that they do not necessarily reflect all of the residents in the town of Danvers. They are not elected. They are appointed by our town manager, and some have been appointed by the previous town manager, Wayne Marquis. Some of them have been on the board for 20 to 25 years. It's time to move on and let the current residents and interested parties participate in our planning effort, because we, as the current residents, are going to live with this planning effort that has been proposed. And the thing is, as you know, MBTA law is another one that's imposing restrictions on our zoning. And the in-law apartments is another one where the town is being dictated by our legislators that we will follow. Where are our independent zoning restrictions and planning guidelines? They are now being imposed by the state, very similar to what's happening with our school system. So let's just get into the primary story that we're talking about. Danvers Concerned Citizens had called a meeting regarding town issues related to planning and the lack of a master plan, called the Danvers Residents United. They decided last night to be called Danvers Concerned Citizens, and we'll oblige with that. On Thursday, September 4th, at 6:30 p.m., there was a meeting of several residents, and they were meeting at the Danvers Police Station, the training room. This is the first time I've experienced a meeting in the training room, and I want to thank Police Chief for his assistance in obtaining this room. It was very comfortable. You don't need a microphone. You don't need speakers. You can speak to people face to face, and it probably holds 50 to 60 people. Last night, we've had probably 20-some people that were in the meeting. But the purpose of this meeting was to determine objective and contribution to the town of the current planning efforts and the zoning that has been put in place. The agenda was really a recent presentation of the citizens' petitions placed before the town meeting and the response by the planning board. I was notified last night that the presentation that myself and Jim Morose and Joanne made 2 weeks ago was really being ignored and visually ignored by the planning board. They were bored by the presentation, and I don't think they wanted to hear what we had to say. However, I want to thank Lou George for making this possible, because he has been the only one that has expressed interest in what the residents had to say. And I think he comes from a school from years ago when his father was selectman in the town of Danvers. And I appreciate his contribution to our efforts to address the planning board. Why do we need to approve and request exemptions, variances, and all kinds of exceptions when we have zoning in place that we are supposed to follow? Even the zoning in place is being abused because of these exceptions that are requested by the developers and their attorneys to improve the return on investment of these parcels of land. Well, recently, the planning board approved one of the future zoning developments at Essex and Elm Street, and the Danvers Dental Office development. The development was approved with 13 three-bedroom units, with many of the exceptions approved to make this development financially feasible. Original request, standard procedure, was always higher. It was 16 units, three-bedroom units, in that one little pocket of Danvers on Elm and Essex Street. Now, by law, by zoning, they were only permitted 11. And that was dense enough for that facility. They were looking for all kinds of exceptions on parking and tandem parking and all kinds of units that they would impose on the adjoining residents. The current plan of 13 units was finally approved after the attorney that was representing the developer basically took over this meeting, and it was not a nice thing to see where the developer takes over what they want to do with that property. Our planning board needs to represent us, the Danvers residents, and not the developers. So I think this is something that needs to be addressed, and I think it will be addressed in the review of the Danvers Town Charter and Danvers Town Manager Act. So, following examples of current regulations that defy the character of our community, at least to some residents, Maple Square is one that's a standing example of developer abuse of the zoning that is in place. And even that zoning is excessive to a point where residents are complaining about the development. Pine Street development is another one that's being considered. The Essex and Elm Street we just talked about, Danvers Hardware, and the whole block is going to be multi-story residential development with businesses possibly on the first floor. Now, that has not materialized on Maple Square, and all of the storefronts that have been planned in that development are basically vacant, and they're awaiting business development. When we continue to embark on this refined proposed zoning, we need to move with caution and consider the unintended consequences. The consequences are already evident in the Maple Square project. Density, congestion, parking, and the associated traffic. Now, I went to the assessor's office, which is public information. That new complex, as it exists right now, is assessed at, I believe, $24 million. So there will be tax revenue that will be coming from that unit, but you will not be able to assess that property until it is filled. And right now, it doesn't look like it's going to be filled very quickly. Now, the parking is a situation. I've talked about that in the past. And one of the solutions, and I even mentioned that during our meeting last night, is the solution is to put on a 3-story parking garage between Cherry Street Fish Market and the church, and that would solve the problems for that end of town altogether. So that's something that needs to be addressed, and that will alleviate the situation on parking. The other thing is Maple Street should be made one way towards Route 62, because that is the most dangerous spot to get from Maple Street to Route 62, which is Maple Street as well. We specifically need a master plan. That's the one thing that was omitted, and one of the questions that was raised at this planning board meeting. We specifically need a master plan to lead us into the future and not rely on the state legislators dictating of how Danvers should be zoned. We need our identity. Master plan for the town of Danvers would define the approach and the types of developments that we would be needing or requesting, identify all of the elements of the master plan, Based on Mass General Law, the outline is already available, and I have received that from our planning department. They are very eager to get onto a plan to develop a master plan for the town, because right now all we're doing is patchwork zoning, and to some extent it is not legal. Danvers cannot rely on grants to perform this effort. And finally, invest some of the tax dollars that we are asked to pay annually and to invest it into a master plan. And the thing is that this master plan can be developed by a combination of town direct employees and a consultant to guide us. Danvers Community Survey Report was issued back in 2017. Was very explicit about the density, congestion, taxes, and traffic. This small town feel was totally ignored because we were on the path to support the state dictates, the MBTA law and the in-law apartment law. So, I have dedicated an awful lot of time to this because I think this is something that's important. And I will report on this meeting that was held yesterday on September 4th at a later show. The special segment for the future discussion regarding appointment by the town manager versus partially elected to provide town-wide reflection of the culture of the traditions. This comment has been made to both the planning board, to the review committee in regards to the Town Manager Act, and the town charter. Now, one of the questions that I've raised is, why do we have a town charter and a Town Manager Act? Let's get it. This is something that's contradictory in some cases because it does not serve the town well. We have a weak Board of Selectmen who are elected to represent us, and a strong Town Manager Act, and we are looking for an employee to implement some of the policies that the town selectmen do not want to enforce. Town Charter, Town Manager Review and Evaluation, Planning Board Considerations, appointed or elected. That has been a subject of many meetings, and I would give Sally Calhoun a lot of credit, and because they've gone through some very serious times about what are we really getting into on the Town Charter and Town Manager Act review. So we need to address that issue, and that's what I'm looking for. But let me summarize it, because that's the best way. The Town Charter and the Town Manager Act Review Committee has been functioning for over, I believe, 8 or 9 months. They've had meetings every 2 weeks, very conclusive meetings. However, as I stated in the meeting last night, the appointments to that committee were very let me say it this way. The appointments were not evident of direct knowledge of how our government really works. Our town meeting members were not directly ever involved in the town government. So I don't know how they could evaluate a documents of our governing documents or our Constitution, basically. So I will be looking forward to the review of the recommendations and the report by this committee, and that's supposed to be starting this month. And I have already discussed this with some of the selectmen. They need to address specific issues that have not been or have been avoided by the review committee. One of the biggest is, are we ready to become a city, or do we want to stay as a town? It seems like there's resistance to moving forward because our town meeting is not working to the extent that it should be. And the Board of Selectmen are being very weak in their policies and procedures. And we have a brand new town manager. And she is not a mayor. It's elected by the town. She is a town employee. And we have to get that straight in our head. The policies and procedures are set by the Board of Selectmen, and they need to be put to task to lead this town forward. So, that's my short version of the Town Manager Act, but I will go into the next story that I want to address, and I've addressed it prior to this meeting, of this program. One reason why Danvers Public Schools are losing students to Essex Tech and many private schools are the programs and discipline of the educational facilities. If the town wants to know why so many families are opting for private schools, homeschooling, or Essex Tech, one explanation is staring it right in the face. The move to teach to the state mandates because of the funding carrot. Focus of private and technical schools is not outcome-based education, with the technical schools being in fashion now. Needless DEI, SEL, and various other progressive developments have convinced many parents that their kids can no longer get the rigorous education Danvers Public Schools used to be. They used to be famous for that. And I agree with that statement because 30 years ago, even then, the Danvers school system was living on the laurels of being the best school system in the North Shore, even competing with private schools. We are living on former laurels of providing a great education. We need to restructure, and all residents, including taxpayers, need to be included in this effort. What I have noticed, and this is opinion, what I have noticed is the superintendent and the administration of the school system and the principals only listen to the parents that have children in the school system currently. And that changes year by year. And we are getting a new crop of students that are coming in. The kindergarten, the grammar schools are functioning very well. However, the results of the MCAS testing that has happened in the past, and now they've abandoned it, does not give us an opportunity to measure how well we're doing. In the middle school and the high school, all we ever do is complain about special education because it's costing us so much. Well, we need to determine a better way to educate our special education students. We need to be able to include the rest of the 90% of students that are being left behind because students are being led to believe that they can educate themselves. They don't need special education. And I think every student is in need of special education. So, instead of stamping out inequities, DEI, SEL, social and emotional learning, these programs create new issues and further inequities. The current crop of students and parents are enrolling their children in out-of-school tutorial programs, private schools, and other religious schools, which contributed to the widening of performance among all course levels. In our opinion, the questioning of people who chose not to send their children to Danvers schools, a parent wrote that a more technical and rigorous curriculum would bring more people back. Parents should not feel like they need innovative math, because there's always a new program. English as a second language. Are we in America or are we in South America? We are as a second language to make sure that kids learn properly. The majority of students, 92%, are being cast aside for the 8 to 10% who deserve special treatment, but not at a cost of the majority. And I've expressed my views while I was attending the school committee meetings, and they just shrugged their shoulders. They didn't like what I said, and they ignored it. But the only way to do that is to stop letting in the equity industrial complex. And that's a very good term, because that's who's running the place. It's not the Danvers superintendent. It's not the Danvers school committee. It is the state. We have to realize that our school system is not a Danvers school system. It is a state of Massachusetts school system. Board of Education is running the place. They provide the curriculum. So that's a very serious issue, and I don't think anybody realizes what's happening. The industrial complex, the equity industrial complex of consultants and administrators and ideologues define the town's options. They're rooted in an ideology that favors equity and not achievement. Our students need to be challenged. Our students need to be fully educated and come back to the 10th percentile level of higher education that we have provided in the past. Equity is a noble goal. It means ensuring that every student has the same opportunities and educational support, but it shouldn't come at the expense of high achievers, nor should it lower expectations, and that's what's happening, and outcomes for the kids of students that equity advocates claim to champion. It will take more than an updating the curriculum for Danvers to regain the trust of families that are fleeing the system. It will take renouncing the ideas that damaged it in the first place. And that's where I came out of some of the school committee meetings. I expressed my views. Nothing was done. They just went on as usual. So I think we need to take another look at the school system, and I am going to keep that school education process in view of some of the comments that we will be making. And hopefully, I don't intend to bring 5 turkeys for the school committee, because they need a heck of a lot more turkeys than that, and I don't have any more. So right now, the turkeys are staying as the planning board with Lou George in charge. And thank you, George. Thank you, Mr. George, for assisting us to get our message across. So, next story is really based on the Town of Danvers seal. And what Ben, if you can put that up, I would appreciate it. There we go. Town of Danvers incorporated in 1757. Now, we have been in existence a lot longer than that, because we were part of the Salem Village, and after it broke up, we established our own town. But the words that really brought me to this seal is the king unwilling. The town meeting is the strongest of all citadels of civil liberty, the purest of the democracies. Now, democracies is a very loose term that we use, but I think it has functioned well. But at that time, when the town was established, it was open town meeting, and everyone had an opportunity to come before the town meeting and ask for the town moderator and the board of selectmen, and ask for their issues. So this will be next year will be our 250th anniversary of the United States. In 1776, we declared our independence, and 2026 will be the 250th year of this country. Historic anniversary will be conducted by the Historic Society and individuals in our town. Bill Kossawan is one, and he is in the process of identifying a plot of land and a reconditioning of a painting that to him and to some residents represents the start of the revolution in 1774, I believe. So I don't know, Ben, if we have any clips of that painting, but that is being reconditioned. And we had Bill on the show two shows ago, and he gave us the whole history of the painting, and that will be on display in the town, and we'll invite Bill to give us an update on the next show. So, now, going back to our presentation to the planning board, I have identified several issues in regard to the planning board and the zoning that we have in place. And our neighbors and our local North Shore communities are challenging this law. We have adopted it because we were led into that law before it was even passed. And the thing is that communities such as Marblehead, Marshfield, Middleton, Tewksbury, Wilmington, and Winthrop, Carver, Draycote, East Bridgewater, and other communities. Milton is one that has challenged the law in court. The law has been identified by our auditor that it has unintended consequences and unfunded liability. So the thing is that these laws by the state of Massachusetts and our representative and senator from our region have led us into a position where we have lost the identity and the character of our own towns because they want every town to be the same. Well, it's not. Danvers is resisting. And Danvers residents are not the only ones who are appealing the MBTA in general local zoning laws. I have a document here. The repeal is a part of 47 initiative petitions that have been proposed to the legislature. And some of these are being approved by the Attorney General because they have to go through a process with signatures and then be put on the ballot. Look at these 3 out of the 47. Repeal MBTA zoning in whole. Preserving local control of zoning. Here we go. Danvers is one, but Danvers is beyond that position, but they have to come back and retract what they have done. Prevent overdevelopment is another position, another petition. Reforming the zoning process. So there are articles that are going to be debated and placed on the ballot in our elections next year. And the thing is, I just hope that these are not just somebody's fancy, because the legislature has negated any petition that does not serve them well. So, many issues with density, congestion, and parking need to be addressed, and as we spoke already. And the one thing that I want to reinforce is we have a issue in town that is being dictated by our legislators or our big brother in Boston. DEI has been vacant in our town since the previous town manager left. We should not renew that position. That position is a duplicate of existing functions that are being done by volunteer committees and the HR department in our town. We need to get away from identifying issues that do not exist. So, one of the things that I want to express, and this has been an issue that's been popping up all over the place, but that's something that should be discussed in the Town Charter and Town Manager Act review. One of the things that I have noticed, and I don't want to dwell on it, but this DEI has been instituted by a woke town manager that has refused to accept a resident's petitions, but he reacted to the thin blue line flag with one email. and he caused an awful lot of issues in this town. And what we need to do, we need to stay away from that kind of dictate. Thank you. Now, we have the only thing that I want to address, and it's not the only thing, but I have a whole bunch of information. But to continue our efforts in regard to what's happening with the Beverly Airport hangar construction, which leads to the expansion of the airports to increase the lengths of the runways that are included in the master plan. The hangar itself was never included in the master plan, but the environmental situation persists, and they do not want to address the issue because even the airport has been directed or asked by the Board of Selectmen a Beverly Airport resolution. The comments were incorporated, and this resolution was issued to the Airport Commission by the Danvers Select Board, and right now, I don't see any action on that. There's a sentiment, there's issues, there are overflight issues over our area. There are dangerous overflights over the high school that may someday kill some kids, and I don't want to even imagine that. But that's what we need to stop. The jets are getting more frequent. They're getting to be regularly scheduled flights. Are we a jetport now? We need to resist that, and we need to request our government and our elected officials to stand up and be counted. We need to stop this expansion. Beverly Airport is not Logan Airport. So, expansion of Beverly Airport and the impacts on the quality of life in Danvers. There's a proposed resolution that's been submitted to the airport commissioners and to the Board of Selectmen in the town of Danvers. We have now appointed 2 individuals out of 9 that are basically not functioning properly because they are outnumbered by 7-2. The Beverly commissioners have one interest in mind, and the Danvers commissioners at the Beverly Airport have the resident issues in mind. However, we need to renegotiate this proportional representation because right now we're getting no taxes from the airport and we're not being represented at all. So they're just doing whatever they want, and Danvers has not been able to stop this. So we'll continue that. Recent incidents have made us feel a little bit better, but there's a letter in an article from Maura Healey, our governor. We need reform at Beverly Airport. Governor Healey, environmentalist, top Healey environmental leader, calls for reform. And this reform applies not only to Beverly, but other local airports. So we have pollution happening as a result of the airport. I have been contacted by FAA in Burlington, and I will forward this information. However, I need to summarize this because they will not read everything on here. Now, I just want to go through. Motion is hereby made to revoke the current lease, and that has not happened. They have, Flight Level Aviation has acquired a building permit for this gigantic hangar they claim is for 2 planes. I don't believe that. However, we are going to appeal that building permit because the fire safety and safety to the residents is not being provided by the developer, because the planes that are coming in and out of Beverly Airport are now business jets, 2-engine, 3-engine jets, and they are obtaining fuel at the west side of the airport in Danvers, and that fuel is being stored in tanks, 10,000-gallon tanks, that are located on the sand right now. They're planning to improve that foundation, and I do not, as an engineer, I do not think it's adequate. So we're going to contest the building permit. But the other environmental issues, reevaluate the master plan. Vote to have BVY to embark into environmental protection report or environmental impact report. They have not done that. They are afraid to do one for the entire airport because it will show that the impact to our residents is tremendous. And the thing is, we are helpless because our elected officials that can do something about it have been resistant to get involved, because this issue has been festering for 35 years now, and it will continue. However, in September, the second meeting of the Board of Selectmen, they are planning to have the airport commissioners come and update us on this issue. Well, I am just advising you that we all need to go to that meeting, and that will be, I believe, September 23rd. So let's attend the meeting. And, Ben, if you can throw up my famous coming soon, it is already here, commuter and business jet service. Coming soon, BVY to Nantucket, and they were advertising that in the journals. Beverly Airport Plant Master Plan runway expansions are already inviting new and more intense jet traffic to our neighborhoods. What happened to being a good neighbor? They just said, stuff it, guys. We're going to do what we're going to do. FAA is being considered for consolidation and retraining of personnel to get out from under the DEI mandates instituted by the last administration. Congress is lacking any authority, and Congressman Moulton has failed the residents of this district. He's running for re-election again next year, and we need to bring this issue to his side. The special segment that I was going to do, but I'm into 3 minutes to go, is special segment Town Charter, Town Manager Act Review and Report submitted to Select Board, review the approach and process of findings. You have on the website for the town a report that was prepared by Sally Calhoun and the committee, and that will be addressed by the Board of Selectmen during the month of September, October, and November. We need to study that report well. To my knowledge and my extensive involvement in this, the film for every meeting is available on DCAT. However, the minutes of the meetings are also available, and they should be requested from the town hall because there's probably 40 or 50 meetings that have been held, and we need to review all of that. The recommendations are very loose, and they need to be refined. I believe that the review committee should reconvene and readdress the issues that they have drastically avoided. Look over the report. It's 65 pages long, officially submitted to the board, and it is available. Sally Calhoun was doing a great job with this, but the town needs to address the special issues that have been identified. And I will bring that up in the next show, which will be, I believe, 2 weeks from now. And we will continue the discussion on the town charter review because that is the most important factor in our government. We need to make adjustments to reflect the residents and not be led by people that don't know what's going on. One sad situation is that we had surveys done in the past, and I asked the question of certain select men and select women, have they looked at the report? What report? Well, this report was done in 2017. We need to address that, or we need to conduct another survey, and we need to pay for it because we need a master plan for this town so we know where we're going and when or what we're going to be when we grow up. Good night, good afternoon, good morning. Thank you for listening. I appreciate your time, and the turkeys love you.